on February 18, 2001. During the prestigious NASCAR Daytona 500 race, the legendary Dale Earnhardt fought hard before his fateful crash. As the engine died, the entire NASCAR world was in shock. But what happened before that moment? After nearly 20 years of silence, Darrell Waltrip, who witnessed it all, finally revealed Dale Earnhardt's last words before the fateful crash. These words not only revealed the true character of Dale, but also changed the way we perceive this legend. Dale Earnhardt's life. Join us as we revisit the life of Dale Earnhardt, the unique relationship he had with Darrell Waltrip, and the awful events that transpired on that day. The legendary race car driver Dale Earnhardt was more than just a brilliant racer. He was also a lasting emblem of NASCAR and American society. One must go back to the small village in North Carolina, where Dale Earnhardt was shaped into a legendary character to fully comprehend the great respect and profound sentiments that are triggered whenever his name is spoken. Dale Earnhardt was born on April 29, 1951, in Kannapolis, North Carolina, into a family that was heavily involved in the world of motorsports. The local racing car driver Ralph Earnhardt was well known for his son's talent, and he was also a prominent race car driver himself. Dale's father was anxious that his son would not find stability via racing, and he would not initially support him. This was, even though Dale grew up in an environment that was quite fast-paced. Despite this, Dale's zeal could not be stifled without consequences. He would sneak into the garage even when he was a little lad and learn how to fix and even drive on his father's old, beat-up automobiles. He would do this even when he was a child. It was the initial step on a journey that would eventually lead to challenges, as well as inspiring moments of tremendous significance. Dale Earnhardt was so determined to pursue his passion for racing that he even quit high school to do it. He was determined to do whatever it took to achieve his goal. At the beginning of his career, he faced a challenging phase. At the beginning of his racing career, Dale had to contend with a lack of opportunities and financial challenges. Nonetheless, he was determined and ultimately prevailed. The Charlotte World 600 was when Dale Earnhardt Jr. made his debut in the NASCAR Winston Cup program during the 1975 season. Experts took notice of his audacious approach, even though his performance was not very impressive. When Dale was honored with the title of Rookie of the Year in 1979, he accomplished a significant career milestone. When Dale Earnhardt won the NASCAR Cup Series championship in 1980, he made history by being the only driver in the series history to do so immediately after being awarded Rookie of the Year. Only 1 year later, this remarkable achievement was realized. The Intimidator had already started to solidify his place as the invincible champion of NASCAR at this point. He was given this nickname because he drove dangerously. Not only was he a skilled driver, but he was also much more. Additionally, he was a shrewd strategist who would be willing to do anything to achieve victory. Unfortunately, Dale Earnhardt's celebrity was not just due to his talents in racing. He was also famous for other things. The toughness and determination that he embodied were admired by all who knew him. Dale was quite wealthy, yet he chose to live a modest lifestyle. The fact that he constantly interacted with people, signing autographs and posing for photographs, helped him earn the respect and admiration of millions of people. Rather than only being a symbol of speed, the black Chevrolet Num. 3 that Dale drove was more than just a symbol of force and determination. During his almost 30-year career, Dale Earnhardt won 7 NASCAR Cup Series titles, tying the record held by the legendary Richard Petty for the most crowns won in the series. A total of 76 races were won by Earnhardt. To Dale, however, victory was not about the trophy itself. It was about changing the way people think about NASCAR for all time and using that influence to influence future generations. In addition to his career as a race car driver, He became emblematic of the working class in the United States of America and a legend in his own right. There were some individuals on the track who were not willing to comply with the requests made by the Intimidator. During their time together, Darrell Waltrip developed as one of Dale's most dangerous adversaries. He challenged Dale while simultaneously forging a friendship that was marked by a subtle respect and tension. What happened when Earnhardt and Waltrip, two of the greatest drivers in the history of racing, came face to face? In this article, we will go into the story of their rivalry and the unexpected relationship that they had. The connection between Dale Earnhardt and Darrell Waltrip is a chapter in NASCAR history that is extremely close to the hearts of many people. Special relationship. In addition to being a sport that emphasizes speed, NASCAR is also a location that is responsible for the creation of legends, dramatic storylines, and intricate relationships. Dale Earnhardt and Darrell Waltrip are two fierce competitors who, despite having personalities that couldn't be more different from one another, ended up being two of the closest friends in the world. It is impossible to avoid mentioning them. The narrative of their journey is not just about speed and success, but also about the path from strong competition to mutual respect and adoration. Their story includes everything from hard races to contentious crashes. The Intimidator is a moniker that Dale Earnhardt is known by because he is a racer who does not make any concessions. He jumps into the race with an aggressive and fearless approach, and he always places himself in the lead, regardless of who is running next to him. He wins every time. According to him, NASCAR is a competition in which only the most powerful competitors can emerge victorious. Darrell Waltrip, on the other hand, is the personification of strategy and calculating because of his career. Waltrip played a mental game, assessing the course, controlling his tires, saving gasoline, and waiting for the best opportunity to seize the lead. Earnhardt tended to overpower his opponents with aggressive attacks, while Waltrip played a mind game. This unique strategy turned every encounter between them into a fascinating conflict, which attracted the attention of millions of fans and members of the media. Richmond was host to one of the most remarkable confrontations between the two superstars, which took place in the year 1985. Both Earnhardt and Waltrip were engaged in a tight competition for the #1 spot as the race neared its closing laps. As the pressure continued to increase, a collision that would prove to be fatal took place in a split second. Both of them were ousted from the competition, which left the spectators in a state of astonishment. Waltrip, in a fit of rage, did not hesitate to condemn Earnhardt on live television, accusing him of being too aggressive and irresponsible. He said this without the slightest hesitation. Earnhardt simply shrugged his shoulders, grinned, and waited for the next race, as he had done in typical fashion. Collisions that occurred on the track were nothing more than a routine occurrence for him, but Waltrip felt that they were unjust. The two individuals eventually realized that they were unable to eliminate each other from the race, even though they had conflicts. Additionally, to generate excitement, a NASCAR needs not just a powerful intimidator, but also a strategic mind such as Waltrip. The year 1995 marked the beginning of a momentous transition in their relationship. Waltrip suffered a severe accident during the All-Star race, causing him to collide with the wall and shatter 3 of his ribs. Earnhardt was approached by him as soon as he was able to stand, and he questioned, "What were you thinking?" The response that Earnhardt gave, which appeared to be cool, was simply, "What were you thinking? Looking to go ahead of me?" After that, Earnhardt said, "I hope you have learned your lesson," while smiling cheekily. "Do not ever again attempt to get around me on the outside." To others, that would have been an offensive statement. But for Waltrip, it was the moment when he began to understand that Earnhardt was more than simply a competitor. Rather, he was a fascinating person and a genuine friend. Earnhardt had a side that few people knew about off the track. Even though he was usually icy and decisive on the races, Waltrip once revealed that Earnhardt made it a habit to contact him on Christmas to wish him well and wish him a happy holiday. The fact that Waltrip was still harboring a great deal of hatred at the time meant that he frequently refused to pick up the phone. The response that Waltrip gave to Earnhardt's question was, "I think I missed your call." The only thing that Earnhardt did was grin and say, "I don't need to call you every year." After that, he discreetly removed himself, leaving Waltrip in awe at his departure. Even though Earnhardt never made a point of showing his generosity, those who were truly acquainted with him were aware that underneath the harsh exterior was a person who was committed to his friends. The event that took place at Martinsville is considered to be one of the most illuminating examples in Earnhardt's life. After being involved in a collision during a vital race, a teenage driver was thrown off the track, and as a result, they were unable to win the race. Earnhardt's kindness. One of the anecdotes about Earnhardt that is not widely known, but is still moving, is the one about how he discreetly assisted Waltrip in a significant race. Amid his pursuit of the title at the time, Waltrip was unexpectedly confronted with a significant tire issue. If he did not change the tires promptly, his prospects would be eliminated. On the other hand, Waltrip's crew did not have the financial resources to immediately purchase fresh tires. After Dale Earnhardt discovered the truth, he sent a covert payment to Waltrip's crew. This allowed them to purchase fresh tires, which allowed Waltrip to continue competing in the race. Because Earnhardt never discussed this specific event, it is astonishing that no one was aware of it for a considerable amount of time. It was not to gain fame. Rather, he did it simply because he thought it was the appropriate thing to do. Many years later, when Waltrip made the unintentional discovery of the truth, he approached Earnhardt and asked him why he had assisted without uttering a single word. Simply smiling, Earnhardt responded, "I know you are a true champion, even though you may not like me on the track that I am competing on. I don't want you to make a mistake that might cost you a lot of money, such as not having enough money to buy tires." That moment left Waltrip feeling profoundly moved. He realized that, despite Earnhardt's fierce demeanor and unyielding approach to racing, a kind and sensitive individual was hiding beneath his harsh facade. Dale Earnhardt and Darrell Waltrip were involved in several wrecks and disagreements when they were racing. Each of them pushed the other off the track on many occasions, which resulted in dramatic moments and even caused the NASCAR press to devote a significant amount of ink to studying their conflicts. However, they were aware that each of them was doing everything in their power to achieve victory. Afterwards, in a joint interview, Earnhardt revealed that they had a lot of disagreements and bumped into each other, but that's all part of the game. "I will always appreciate Darrell because he is a tremendous champion, and he has a wonderful family. Let's not be too critical of me, shall we?" Earnhardt's statements were not only tongue-in-cheek, rather, they demonstrated the profound regard that he had for Waltrip, who was one of his most formidable competitors. Earnhardt and Waltrip were intense competitors to begin with, but as their careers reached their pinnacle, they eventually became friends with one another. They began to enjoy remarkable moments with one another, both on and off the track, and they decided to stop viewing each other as just competitors. The unfortunate reality is that Waltrip did not have sufficient time to convey to Earnhardt all of his emotions before the occurrence of the tragedy. Tragic accident. On that tragic day, the best NASCAR drivers in the world competed against one another on the sport's most prestigious track. But it was more than just an ordinary race. This event marked the beginning of the season. It came as a tremendous surprise to everyone that one of the greatest drivers in the history of NASCAR would die away on that specific day. Dale Earnhardt viewed the 2001 Daytona 500 as a measure of the strength of his team. even though it was simply a race with no real significance. Both Michael Waltrip and Dale Earnhardt Jr., two drivers on Earnhardt's team, were leading the race when Earnhardt caused a collision with their vehicles. With that being said, Dale was not simply competing for his benefit. As a guardian for his fellow soldiers, he was also responsible for ensuring that they were victorious. Before the race, Earnhardt gave a speech to his crew, saying, "Today, we race not just to win, but to prove that Dale Earnhardt Inc. is the best team out there." As the last circuits were being completed, the tension on the track reached a very high point. Initially, Michael Waltrip was in the lead, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. quickly followed in his footsteps. While the other racers were pursuing them, Earnhardt shielded his teammates from harm. Because of his great racing ability, Earnhardt was able to hold his place and defend the formation like a track warrior. Despite the strong pressure that was being applied by Sterling Marlin, Kenny Shader, and Rusty Wallace, amongst others, every competitor's attention was focused on the quest for victory throughout the last lap of the race. After that, it seemed as if, by some stroke of luck, the back end of Dale Earnhardt's car came into contact with the car driven by Sterling Marlin. The third-place car was unable to maintain control of its vehicle and crashed into the wall at the fourth turn. At first look, the collision appeared to be nothing out of the ordinary, a typical occurrence in the world of motorsports to the spectators in the grandstand and on television. However, after a few seconds had passed, the sound disappeared completely. According to Darrell Waltrip, the sense of excitement that was there during the Daytona 500 was palpable. When he was providing commentary on the game for Fox Sports, he was in the midst of one of the most incredible experiences of his life, both professionally and emotionally. Michael Waltrip, his younger brother, was on the verge of winning the Daytona 500. He was almost on the edge of victory. At the moment that Michael crossed the finish line, it appeared as though Darrell's hopes and ambitions had been realized. Darrell screamed out in a burst of delight. Michael did it! During the moment, on televisions around the nation, he was successful. His voice made a cracking sound because he was so ecstatic. Nevertheless, that joy did not last long because things eventually turned out to be unpleasant. At that same moment, Darrell took another glance around the track, this time in an attempt to locate the number 3 car that he had been following throughout the entirety of the race. This was the vehicle that Dale Earnhardt was most familiar with. The visual of the immobilized vehicle, which had previously been a representation of an unstoppable NASCAR legend lying against the retaining wall, was the one that caused Darrell to come to a complete and utter halt. In the beginning, he made an effort to convince himself that it was nothing new, even though Earnhardt had been involved in several accidents in the past. He never seemed to be affected by them. He would chuckle and continue as if nothing had happened between them. Nevertheless, things were different at this point. It was not possible to discern any signs of life in Dale. He remained immobile and silent in the car for the whole of the drive. In an attempt to find comfort in its presence, Darrell stared closely at the television. Nevertheless, as he continued to focus his attention on the situation, his worry mounted. A more worried tone began to emanate from him. "Please have a look at Dale," in contrast to the prior time, when his voice was filled with eagerness, a look of Dale's vehicle. Despite this, he felt an overpowering and wordless feeling that something was extremely wrong. He thought he was doing okay. The seconds went by without a pause for Darrell as he watched the car with the number 3 becoming ever more entrenched in the retaining wall. It came to his attention that Dale did not move and remained still when the medical team approached the vehicle. The sensation was similar to that of someone squeezing his heart. He couldn't help but think of Dale, the person he'd raced with, battled tooth and nail for every position on the track, argued passionately with, and casually spent precious moments with. He couldn't help but think of Dale. There were the furious races, the terrible crashes, and even the handshakes that took place after the battle that came flooding back into Darrell's consciousness like a surging tide. As a friend, a symbol of brilliance, and a colleague, Dale Earnhardt was always held in the utmost esteem by Darrell Earnhardt, even though they were quite antagonistic toward one another. Darrell said that Dale Earnhardt was a man with an enormous amount of heart. In addition to being a forceful and unyielding individual, he had a profound concern for the people he loved and for the team. That perception was now being called into question directly in front of his eyes, and it was happening in the middle of a terrible calm. As the show went on, Darrell struggled to keep his composure, and he was on the point of losing it despite his best efforts. Even though he was aware that the reality was beginning to dawn on him, he continued to refuse to accept the worst possible outcome. During a subsequent interview, he stated that it was difficult for him to come to terms with the fact that Dale had passed away. Nevertheless, as I observed the responses of the medical team, I realized that I had seen the unfolding of a tragedy. Aside from the anguish of losing a close friend, Darrell experienced a sense of helplessness on that particular day. It was as if he had witnessed the soul of NASCAR leave this world. For Darrell, Dale Earnhardt embodied all that was honorable, powerful, and genuine about the National Auto Racing Association, NASCAR. He was much beyond the role of a simple driver. After some time had passed, Darrell would say that the moment he realized the number 3 vehicle was motionless was one of the most heartbreaking experiences of his life. There have been a great number of accidents and catastrophic occurrences on the track, but this particular one was one of a kind. It was Dale who was present. Because he was one of a kind, it appeared as though NASCAR had lost its spirit when he passed away. That day was filled with several unfortunate events, not the least of which was the fatal collision. A more insult was put to the hurt by Dale Earnhardt's final words. It seemed as though he was getting ready to compete in his last race, since his comments carried a great deal of weight and meaning. More than 20 years had passed since Darrell Waltrip had made those statements, and he had kept them to himself until that fateful day at Daytona Speedway. Despite the hectic intensity that is present, Dale Earnhardt appears to have a remarkable level of composure. Others who were acquainted with him noticed a change in his behavior. The violent intensity that had been characteristic of his racing personality had disappeared. Dale shared with me that all he wants is for Michael to triumph today. This was the historic pre-race discussion that took place between his friend and old rival, Darrell Waltrip. Considering that the individual is known for his tenacious pursuit of winning, the statement was completely out of character for him. Dale focused all of his attention on his team and the individuals he cared about on that particular day, rather than caring about his ego to the same extent. Every single person was taken aback by his actions. He appeared to be taking pleasure in every moment, as seen by the fact that he spent more time with his colleagues, demonstrating his appreciation via hugs and honest comments. When discussing how he wasn't acting naturally, one of the members noted that it seemed as if he knew something that we didn't. Before the marathon, he desired to take pleasure in every moment. After saying the motivational words, "Race like it's the last race," Dale left his squad and went his separate way. The fact that Michael and Dale Jr. were the first to cross the finish line was more significant to Darrell than anything else. His perception of Dale was that he was more than just a competitor. On top of that, he appeared to be a friend. Darrell made a statement, his voice shaking, that he had a method of speaking to me that seemed to be conclusive. In retrospect, I have no idea if he was aware of it or not, but I have a strong belief that he was willing to give up anything for the sake of his team. It was more than simply a racing strategy that Dale said in his final words. They demonstrated the multifaceted nature of his personality, a person who had prioritized his happiness over the happiness of his teammates, who had previously lived for track triumphs. For Darrell, Dale's staff, and millions of fans, their statements created a treasured experience that they will always remember. An acknowledgement of the influence, kindness, and affection he had for the individuals in his life. When Dale's vehicle crashed into the wall on the final lap of the race, he was tragically killed in the incident that ultimately took his life. Dale Earnhardt's legacy. The departure of Dale Earnhardt was not only a tragic bereavement for his family and the people who were devoted to him, but it also created a koha in the world of NASCAR. His legacy, on the other hand, extended well beyond the scope of his career and had a significant influence on the development and evolution of the sport. At the time of the terrible accident that took place at the Daytona 500 in 2001, watchers of television and spectators at the racetrack did not immediately comprehend the gravity of the situation. However, when the news of Earnhardt's passing was confirmed, NASCAR was in a state of shock that had never been seen before in the sport. It was a wake-up call for many people, bringing to their attention the potential hazards that this activity, which had never been regarded seriously enough, may pose. When Earnhardt passed away, it served as the impetus for a revolution in the safety procedures that NASCAR implemented. Before Earnhardt's accident, the usage of the head and neck protection system, HANS device, was voluntary. However, after the accident, it became obligatory for participants to wear the gear. Because of this system, the danger of neck and head injuries in high-speed crashes was greatly decreased, which resulted in the saving of the lives of a great number of drivers in the years that followed. Additionally, to guarantee the safety of drivers, NASCAR implemented several technical modifications. A chassis design that is more robust, crash absorption zones that are more effective, and a seatbelt system that is more sophisticated were all components that were created for the car of tomorrow, COT. In addition, safer barriers, which stand for steel and foam energy reduction, were built on racetracks to absorb the impact that occurred when the car collided with the wall. This resulted in a substantially lower number of injuries. All of these enhancements were a direct result of Earnhardt's accident, which contributed to the sport of NASCAR being a safer environment. However, the influence of Dale Earnhardt extends beyond the modification of safety standards. He was a representation of unwavering racing, unwavering drive, and unwavering courage. His moniker, the Intimidator, was not only a tribute to his aggressive driving style, but also a testament to his never-say-die mindset. Earnhardt's legendary triumphs, such as the stunning comeback he made at Talladega in 2000, when he passed his competitors in the last laps of the race, are still acknowledged as some of the most memorable events in the history of United States auto racing. Not only did Dale Earnhardt leave his impact on motorsport, but he also made his mark on the NASCAR community. He was a kind and helpful individual who was always eager to assist his teammates, regardless of whether or not they were competitors. One such instance was when he covertly paid for Darrell Waltrip's crew to get fresh tires, which eventually enabled Waltrip to continue competing in the race. It wasn't until many years later that Waltrip became aware of the compassionate and sportsmanlike conduct that had been performed. Fans continue to pay tribute to Dale Earnhardt by doing the three-fingered salute on the third lap of the Daytona Grand Prix every year when NASCAR returns to the track. It is a demonstration of the fact that he was not only an excellent driver, but also a legend, a source of motivation for all those individuals who have a deep attachment to the sport of speed and are enthusiastic about it. Even though Dale Earnhardt is no longer competing on the track, his legacy will continue to be carried on in the hearts of his fans, in the exciting races, and in the drivers that followed in his footsteps. Rather than only altering NASCAR, he completely transformed the sport. And because of this, his legacy will endure for all time, not only in the world of NASCAR, but also in the hearts of racing fans all around the international community. What makes a legacy truly last? Is it the titles, the victories, or the people who continue to write the story? In the world of NASCAR, Dale Earnhardt Sr. not only left his mark on the track, but also inspired generations to come, especially his son, Dale Earnhardt Jr. Having followed in his father's footsteps, the son of the renowned Dale Earnhardt not only had an impressive career of his own in the world of NASCAR, but he also followed in his father's footsteps. Having grown up in the shadow of his father, who was known as the Intimidator, Dale Jr. was always attracted by speed and racing. This fascination began at a young age. On the other hand, rather than allowing himself to be influenced by the huge legacy that his father left behind, he utilized it as an incentive to express himself on the track. The victory that Dale Jr. achieved at the Daytona 500 in 2004 was perhaps one of the most emotionally charged moments of his career. Dale Earnhardt Jr. returned to the same disastrous racetrack just 3 years after his father, Dale Earnhardt Sr., had fallen unexpectedly in a terrible accident in the Daytona 500 in 2001. He brought with him enormous expectations and pressure from fans, racing teams, and himself. It was everyone's concern that Dale Jr. would be able to carry on the magnificent legacy that his father had established. Dale Jr. exhibited tenacity, patience, and a tactical approach to racing for the entirety of the competition. These are characteristics that he inherited from his father. Dale Jr. produced a fantastic charge as the race neared its final circuits, passing Tony Stewart to cross the finish line first. This allowed him to win the race. There were tens of thousands of NASCAR fans at Daytona International Speedway, and as soon as he crossed the finish line, they exploded in shouts and cries. Along with being a time of personal triumph for Dale Jr., it was also a moment of respect to his wonderful father, who had passed away at this particular track 3 years before Dale Jr. His victory. After stepping out of his vehicle, Dale Jr. waved the number 3 flag, which was the renowned number that Dale Earnhardt Sr. had worn as a way of paying honor to his late father before he passed away. It didn't take long for the picture to become one of the most memorable moments in the history of NASCAR. Not only did it serve as a continuance of a heritage for fans, but it also served as a confirmation that Earnhardt Sr., the spirit was still very much alive, continues to be remembered on the track and in the hearts of all those who pass by. Immediately following the victory, Dale Jr. expressed his feelings by saying, "I know my dad is here, watching me. Every lap, I am aware of him. This win is not just for me, but also for him and for everyone else who has loved my father throughout his life from the beginning." With his victory at the Daytona 500 in 2004, Dale Earnhardt Jr. solidified his position as one of the most accomplished drivers in NASCAR. This victory also demonstrated that he was not simply the son of a great man, but also a legend in his own right. Most importantly, it was a holy moment because it brought together 2 generations of Earnhardts. Although one of the Earnhardts had died away, his legacy continued to be carried on by his son, who was both skilled and daring. Remember the moment Dale Earnhardt Jr. won the 2004 Daytona 500? What do you think that win meant to Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s legacy in NASCAR? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more interesting updates. Thank you, and see you in the next videos.